Dear Mother, today I held a man's life in my hands, and he begged me for mercy in a language I barely understood. But I read his eyes. God help me, I read his eyes. I'm writing this by candlelight in a cellar that smells like death and wet stone. My hands are shaking, not from the cold, though it's bitter here in Belgium, but because today I looked into a man's eyes and saw something I wasn't supposed to see. I saw myself. And Mother, I need to tell you what happened. Because if I don't write it down, if I don't confess this to someone who knew me before I became this, I'm afraid I'll lose the last piece of who I was. Mother, I'm going to be honest with you in this letter in a way I never could face to face. Because if I make it home, when I make it home, I don't want to burden you with these memories. But right now, I need to tell someone. I need to tell you. This cellar sits beneath what used to be a monastery outside Bastogne. December 23rd, 1944. The Battle of the Bulge, they're calling it, though we don't call it anything down here. We just call it hell. We're not supposed to be here. This was meant to be a brief stopover, a staging area before we moved to a proper field hospital. But the Germans pushed through, cut us off. Now we're trapped in this medieval stone room with 47 wounded men and nowhere to send them. The ceiling is low. I can reach up and touch the curved stone with my fingertips. Water seeps through cracks in the walls, making everything damp and cold. There's one small window at ground level, barely bigger than a shoebox, and that's our only source of natural light. The rest comes from candles we're rationing like gold. The smell is what hits you first. Copper and gangrene, and the sweet-sick odor of infection. Unwashed bodies. Blood that's dried and then gotten wet again. Vomit. Urine. The particular stench of bowels that have been torn open. And underneath it all, the smell of fear. Sharp and acrid, like metal on your tongue. You get used to it. That's the terrible thing, Mother. You get used to anything if you're exposed to it long enough. I've been a nurse for 18 months now, shipped out in June of 1943, full of idealism and patriotic fervor. I was going to save lives. I was going to make a difference. I was going to be a hero. But there are no heroes here, just people trying to survive. The wounded keep coming in waves. Boys. And they are boys, Mother, so many of them barely old enough to shave. Carried in on stretchers made from barn doors, tent canvas, sometimes just their own coats tied between two rifles. Some are conscious and screaming. Others are silent, eyes wide and glassy with shock. We do what we can with what we have, which isn't much. We ran out of morphine 2 days ago. We're down to our last few bottles of sulfa powder. Bandages are being washed and reused until they fall apart. Dr. Harrison is performing surgery with instruments he's sterilizing in a pot over a makeshift fire because our autoclave is 20 miles away in a hospital we can't reach. This morning, a boy from Texas came in with his leg hanging by threads of tissue. Dr. Harrison amputated it on a wooden door using a bone saw and a leather strap for the boy to bite down on. No anesthetic, no proper surgical environment, just raw, brutal necessity. The boy's name was Cooper. He was 19 years old. He died an hour after the surgery, not from the amputation, but from shock and blood loss we couldn't stop. We buried him in the frozen ground behind the monastery. That makes 11 graves in 3 days. Do you remember the girl I used to be, Mother? I think about her sometimes. That version of Sarah who grew up in our house on Maple Street, who wore her Sunday dress to church every week and sang in the choir, who got straight A's in nursing school and cried the first time she had to give someone an injection. That girl believed in order, in cleanliness, in following procedures and protocols. She believed that medicine was a science, that if you did everything correctly, if you followed the rules, you could save people. That girl is dead. She died somewhere between the landing at Normandy and this cellar in Belgium. Maybe she died gradually, a little bit each day, with every boy who bled out despite my best efforts. Or maybe she died all at once, and I just didn't notice. I don't cry anymore, Mother. I used to cry all the time, remember? I cried at weddings and funerals and sad movies. I cried when Papa died. I cried when Thomas shipped out to the Pacific. But I haven't cried in months. There's something wrong with that, isn't there? Something fundamentally broken inside a person who can look at a 19-year-old boy dying on a cellar floor and feel nothing. Not sadness, not grief, just exhaustion and the mechanical thought, we need that stretcher for the next one. The other nurses are the same way. We move through our days like automatons, efficient, professional, dead behind the eyes. We don't talk about it. What would we say? That we've seen so much death we've become numb to it, that we've built walls around our hearts so high and thick that nothing can get through? We eat our rations in silence. We sleep in shifts, our uniforms still stiff with blood because we don't have clean ones. We wake up and do it all again. Lieutenant Morrison used to be a pediatric nurse in Philadelphia. She was warm and maternal, always hugging people, always smiling. Now, her face is a mask. She can intubate a man with a collapsed lung without flinching, can pack a sucking chest wound without missing a beat, can tell a boy he's dying without her voice wavering. Nurse Chen was engaged before the war. She used to talk about her wedding plans all the time. The dress, the flowers, the honeymoon they'd take to Niagara Falls. She doesn't talk about it anymore. Last week she received a letter saying her fiancé was killed in the Pacific. She read it, folded it up, put it in her pocket, and went back to work. That's who we've become. Women who've learned that caring too much is a liability. That emotional distance is the only way to survive. But today, Mother, my walls cracked. Today, I couldn't maintain that distance. Today, I became human again, and it broke me. He came in just after dawn. I was changing bandages on a sergeant who'd taken shrapnel to his shoulder. The wound was infected. I could smell it, see the red streaks radiating up his arm. But there was nothing more I could do. We'd already used our last dose of penicillin on someone else yesterday. I heard the commotion at the cellar entrance, voices shouting, boots on stone steps. Then, 4 soldiers stumbled in, carrying a stretcher made from a barn door. The boy on the stretcher was conscious, which surprised me. Most gut wounds render men unconscious within minutes from shock and blood loss. But he was awake. His eyes were open, tracking across the ceiling. His hands were pressed against his stomach, trying to hold something inside that shouldn't be outside. "Ma'am." One of the stretcher bearers, couldn't have been more than 20 himself, had tears streaming down his face. "Ma'am, please, you gotta help him. You gotta save him." I've heard that plea 1,000 times. It never gets easier. I walked over and looked down at the wounded soldier. He turned his head and our eyes met. Blue eyes. So blue they looked almost artificial in the dim light. And so young, Mother. He looked like he should be in high school, not lying on a barn door with his intestines exposed. "What's his name?" I asked. "Private James Mitchell, ma'am. He's 23. Got hit by shrapnel from an 88mm shell about 2 hours ago." 2 hours. And still conscious. That told me everything I needed to know about how bad it was. The worst wounds don't kill you immediately. They take their time. I knelt beside the stretcher. The other nurses were overwhelmed. Lieutenant Morrison was trying to stop an arterial bleed. Nurse Chen was triaging 3 new arrivals, and Nurse Patterson was assisting Dr. Harrison with another emergency surgery. "Private Mitchell," I said quietly. "I'm Lieutenant Winters. Can you hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was barely a whisper, but steady. "I can hear you. I'm going to examine your wound, okay? It might hurt." "It already hurts, ma'am." A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. "Don't think you can make it much worse." I carefully moved his hands away. His uniform was soaked through with blood, dark venous blood mixed with something lighter. Arterial damage and organ perforation. Even in a fully equipped hospital with a surgical team and blood transfusions, this would be nearly impossible to survive. Here, in this cellar, with nothing but basic supplies, there was no hope. I knew it the moment I saw the wound. I knew Private James Mitchell was going to die. The only question was whether it would take hours or days. But I also knew something else. He couldn't die alone. Not this boy with his blue eyes and his brave attempt at humor, not if I could help it. So I made a decision. "Private Mitchell," I said, covering his wound with a clean bandage, one of our last. I'm going to stay with you, all right? You're not going to be alone. Relief flooded his face. Thank you, ma'am. I looked up at the stretcher bearers who were standing there helplessly. You boys need to get back to your unit. We'll take care of him. They didn't want to leave. I could see it in their faces, but they nodded and fled back up the stairs, probably to go get themselves killed somewhere else. And then it was just James and me. I moved James to a corner of the cellar where it was slightly quieter, away from the worst of the screaming, away from the constant traffic of nurses and doctors rushing between patients. I brought over a stool and sat beside him. His breathing was labored but regular. His pulse was thready but present. He was in shock, but his body was still fighting. Ma'am? His voice was so quiet I had to lean in close. I'm here. You can call me Sarah if you want. Sarah. He tested the name. That's pretty. Biblical. Yes. My mother chose it. It felt strange to talk about you so casually, Mother, while watching a boy die, but also necessary. Like invoking your name could somehow protect us both. My wife's name is Anne, James said. His hand moved weakly to his chest, fingers fumbling beneath his torn, blood-soaked uniform. After a moment, he pulled out a thin gold band on a chain around his neck. The ring caught the candlelight and glowed softly in the gloom. Anne Marie Mitchell, he continued, his voice gaining a little strength from saying her name. We got married in June 12th, 1943, 16 months ago. 16 months, married for barely a year before being shipped overseas, before ending up here, dying in a Belgian cellar thousands of miles from home. Tell me about her, I said, and he did. For the next hour, James told me about Anne, how they met at a church social when he was 19 and she was 18, how she had freckles across her nose and hated them, but he thought they were beautiful, how she laughed, a full-body laugh that ended in a snort, which embarrassed her but delighted him. He told me about their wedding, small ceremony, just family. Anne wore her mother's dress, altered to fit. They couldn't afford a photographer, so his brother took pictures with a Brownie camera. The reception was in the church basement with homemade food and a record player for music. They had 3 weeks together before he shipped out. 3 weeks of being newlyweds. 3 weeks of waking up next to each other, eating breakfast together, talking about the future they'd build when he came home. We were going to buy a house, James said, his voice getting weaker. Nothing fancy, just a little place with a garden. Anne wanted to grow tomatoes and beans. I told her I'd build her a trellis for climbing plants. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. I wiped it away gently. We talked about kids, he continued. 3, maybe 4. Anne wanted a big family. She's an only child, you see. Always wished she had siblings growing up. So we were going to give our kids that. Brothers and sisters to fight with and play with and grow up with. His eyes were focused on something beyond the ceiling, beyond this cellar, beyond the war. I promised her I'd come home, he whispered. I looked her in the eyes on the train platform and I promised. I'll come home, I said. Wait for me. He turned his head to look at me, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. I'm not going to keep that promise, am I? I could have lied. I should have lied. But looking at James, at this brave, dying boy who deserved honesty, I couldn't. No, I said softly. I don't think you are. He closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his temple into his hair. Okay, he breathed. Okay. The shelling started again around 9 o'clock. The monastery shook with each impact. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling. Somewhere above us, men were killing each other with bullets and bombs and bayonets. But down in our cellar, a strange pocket of stillness existed. Other nurses moved around us, Lieutenant Morrison doing her rounds, Nurse Chen changing bandages, Nurse Patterson assisting with an emergency tracheotomy 3 feet away. Dr. Harrison barked orders in his clipped British accent, his hands steady as he worked to save a life that probably couldn't be saved. The wounded groaned and cried out. Someone was praying in Latin. Another man kept calling for his mother, over and over, "Mama, mama, mama," in a voice that didn't sound human anymore. But James and I existed separately from all of it, like we'd carved out our own small island in this sea of suffering. I've thought a lot about that, Mother. about why James affected me differently than all the other dying boys I've tended, why my carefully constructed walls crumbled for him and not for Cooper or Eddie or any of the countless others. Maybe it was because he reminded me of Thomas, same age, same build, same Midwestern accent that turns vowels soft and gentle. Maybe some part of my brain saw my brother in him and refused to let me stay distant, or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe I was just tired. Tired of being strong, tired of being professional, tired of watching boys die and pretending it didn't tear me apart inside. Maybe James just happened to be the one who caught me on a day when my defenses were too worn down to hold. Whatever the reason, I couldn't leave him, even when other patients needed attention, even when Lieutenant Morrison shot me questioning looks, even when I knew I should be triaging, assessing, doing my job. I stayed with James. Around 10 o'clock, he asked me about my life. "Tell me something," he said, his voice getting weaker with each passing hour. "Tell me about home, about before the war." So I talked. I told him about our house in Connecticut, about Papa's woodshop in the basement where he made furniture that never quite matched what you wanted, Mother, but that you loved anyway because he made it with his hands. About Thomas enlisting in the Navy and writing terrible poetry in his letters home that made us laugh and cry at the same time. I told him about nursing school, about fainting my first day on the ward. Can you imagine? Me, fainting at the sight of blood. The instructor had to drag me outside and make me sit with my head between my knees while she explained that I needed to either get over it or find a different profession. I told him about David Thompson. Remember him, Mother? How he proposed on my 21st birthday with his grandmother's ring? How I said no because I knew somehow that there was something bigger waiting for me, something more important than a quiet life as a doctor's wife in our small town. "I didn't know it would be this," I said quietly, looking around the cellar. "I didn't know important would mean holding dying boys in Belgian cellars." James made a wet, rattling sound that might have been a laugh. "Bet you wish you'd married David," he said. "No." I surprised myself with how firmly I said it. "No, I don't, because then I wouldn't be here, and you'd be dying alone." Around 11 o'clock, James asked me about God. "Do you think—" He paused, coughing, more blood on his lips. "Do you think there's anything after?" I hesitated. "You raised me in the church, Mother. You taught me about heaven and salvation and eternal life. I memorized Bible verses in Sunday school. I sang hymns in the choir. I believed once in a loving God who watched over us. But that was before I watched children die from shrapnel wounds, before I held boys who screamed for mercy while their bodies tore themselves apart, before I learned that prayers don't stop bullets and faith doesn't cure gangrene. Out here, in this war, surrounded by so much senseless death, I've struggled to hold on to those certainties. How can I believe in a benevolent God when 18-year-old boys die screaming? When bodies are blown apart so thoroughly we can't tell which pieces belong to which soldier? When innocence is destroyed so casually, so constantly, so completely? But looking at James, at the terror in his eyes, at this boy who was about to step into the ultimate unknown, I knew I couldn't burden him with my doubts. So I lied. Again. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, I do. I think there's something beautiful waiting. I searched for words that would comfort him. I think all the people we've loved who've gone before are there. Your grandparents, Anne's grandmother. You mentioned she passed last year? She's there waiting. And my father, and everyone else who's died. They're all there, and they're waiting to welcome you home. Will it hurt?" His voice was so small, like a child asking if a shot will hurt before the doctor gives it to him. "Dying? Mother, in all my months of nursing, through all the horrors I've witnessed, I've never heard anything more heartbreaking than those 3 words spoken in a young man's failing voice. Not once you get there," I said, stroking his hair like you used to stroke mine during thunderstorms. "Once you get there, all the pain stops, all the fear stops. There's just peace and love and everyone you've lost. I want that. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. God, I want that so much. I know, sweetheart. The endearment slipped out naturally. I know. But I don't want to leave Anne. His hand clutched the ring hanging around his neck. How can I want both things? How can I want to stop hurting, but also want to stay with her? Because you're human. Because love is complicated and messy and doesn't fit into neat boxes. Because dying is the hardest, most unfair thing in the world, and you're allowed to feel however you feel about it. We sat in silence for a while after that. His breathing was becoming more labored. Each breath sounded like it was being pulled through water. I could feel his pulse weakening, that distinctive flutter and skip that meant his heart was struggling to keep going. "Sarah," he whispered, "I'm here. Will you tell me what you think happens? Your real thoughts? Not," he coughed, "not the comforting version." I was quiet for a long moment, weighing what to say. Then I decided he deserved the truth, or at least my truth. "I don't know," I admitted. "I wish I did. I wish I could tell you with certainty that there's a heaven waiting, that you'll see Anne again someday, that all of this suffering has meaning. But I don't know. No one does. That's the terrifying part. We don't get to know until it's too late to share the answer." James nodded slightly. "That's what I thought. But," I continued, "not knowing doesn't mean nothing. Maybe there is something after. Maybe consciousness continues in some form we can't comprehend. Maybe we become part of something larger, energy or light or the universe itself. Maybe Anne will feel you somehow, in quiet moments, in the wind or the sunrise, or the feeling of being loved even when she's alone. Or maybe it's just nothing," James said. "Maybe. But James, even if it's nothing, even if death is just the end, like falling asleep and never waking, would that be so terrible? No more pain, no more fear, no more suffering, just rest. After everything you've endured, wouldn't rest be a kind of mercy?" He thought about that. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, I think it would be." The next few hours are hard to write about, Mother. James's condition deteriorated rapidly. The blood wasn't just flecks anymore. It was coming up in dark, clotted streams. His breathing became desperate, panicked. The fear in his eyes was absolute. His body was shutting down, and he was fully conscious for it. I'd seen this before, dozens of times. The slow spiral toward death, the body failing system by system. But I'd always maintained distance. I'd held hands, sure. I'd whispered comfort. But I'd kept part of myself locked away, unreachable. With James, I couldn't do it. I couldn't retreat behind my professional walls. So around noon, I did something I'd never done before. I climbed onto the stretcher with him. It wasn't proper. It certainly wasn't regulation. If Matron had seen me, I would have been court-martialed. But I didn't care. I carefully positioned myself beside him, mindful of his wounds, and I held him, cradled his head against my shoulder, wrapped my arms around him as gently as I could. He was so light, Mother, like holding a child. All the muscle and youth and vigor had been burned away by months of war, and what remained was fragile and breaking. "Thank you," he whispered against my shoulder. "Thank you for staying." "Shh. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here." His body shook with a coughing fit. I felt warm blood soak into my uniform, but I didn't pull away. I just held him tighter. "Tell me about your life," he gasped when the coughing subsided. "Not the war. Before. Tell me about being happy." So I talked. I told him about summer evenings in Connecticut when fireflies filled the yard and you and Papa would sit on the porch watching them. About 4th of July picnics by the river where Thomas and I would play until we were sunburned and exhausted. About Christmas mornings with cinnamon rolls and the tree Papa always insisted on decorating himself, even though it ended up lopsided every year. I told him about first crushes and school dances and the pure, uncomplicated joy of childhood before the world showed us its teeth. I told him about wanting to be a nurse because I thought it meant healing people, making them better, sending them home to the lives they'd left behind. I didn't understand, I said softly, that sometimes healing doesn't mean fixing. Sometimes it just means bearing witness, being present, making sure that when the end comes, it doesn't come alone. James's hand found mine and squeezed weakly. "You're good at that," he whispered, "being present. I'm learning. Anne would like you," he said. Then, after a pause, "Will you tell her about this? About how brave you were? How you faced the end with courage? How your last thoughts were of her?" "Yes, James, I'll tell her. Promise. I promise." Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, James's breathing changed. It became irregular. Long pauses between breaths that made my heart stop, then sudden gasps that sounded like drowning. His hand moved weakly to the chain around his neck. "The ring," he managed. "Anne's ring. I need." "What do you need, James? Take it off. Keep it safe. Send it," he coughed, his whole body convulsing. "Send it home to her, please." My hands were shaking as I reached for the clasp. The chain was slick with blood and sweat, and my fingers fumbled with it twice before I managed to unfasten it. The ring slid into my palm, still warm from being against his skin, small and simple. A thin gold band with an inscription inside I could barely make out in the dim light. A +J forever 6/12/43. Forever. 16 months ago, they'd promised forever. "I have it," I said, closing my fingers around it. "I'll keep it safe. I'll make sure Anne gets it. I promise you, James." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you." The words were barely audible. I slipped the ring into my pocket, feeling its weight there like an anchor, like a responsibility I couldn't comprehend yet, but knew I'd carry for the rest of my life. "Sarah," James's voice was fading. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. That's okay. Being scared is okay. Will you stay? Please don't leave. Please don't let me." "I'm not leaving. I'm right here. I'm holding you. You're not alone." His eyes found mine. Those impossibly blue eyes that had been so full of life this morning were dimming now, the light behind them flickering like a candle in wind. "Tell me about the house again," he whispered, "the one Anne and I were going to buy." So I did. I described it in detail: a white cottage with blue shutters, a front porch with a swing, that garden Anne wanted with tomatoes climbing their trellis. I made it real for him. I made it beautiful. "Can you see it?" I asked softly. "Yes." A faint smile touched his lips. "She's there, in the garden. She's waiting for me." "Then go to her, James. It's okay. You can go." His breathing slowed. Each breath came further apart than the last. "Sarah, I'm here. Thank you for making me matter, for treating me like I was someone, not just another. You are someone, James Mitchell. You're Anne's husband. You're loved. You're remembered. You mattered. You'll always matter." One more breath, shallow and rattling, then silence. I felt the exact moment he left, a subtle change, like air pressure shifting. The weight in my arms was still there, but the person was gone. I held him anyway. For another hour, I stayed on that stretcher with James's body in my arms while the war continued around us, while other boys died, while the shelling shook dust from the ceiling. I held him because I'd promised not to leave, and because letting go meant accepting what had just happened. Finally, Lieutenant Morrison came over. She didn't say anything. She just put her hand on my shoulder, a brief touch that conveyed everything words couldn't. I carefully extracted myself from the stretcher. My uniform was soaked with James's blood. My arms were stiff and aching. My legs nearly gave out when I stood. But in my pocket, I felt the weight of Anne's ring, a promise I had to keep. "I've been thinking a lot about death, Mother, about what it means, what it takes, what it leaves behind. Before this war, death was abstract to me. Something that happened to other people, something distant and clinical. I'd seen it in nursing school, of course, patients who coded, elderly people slipping away peacefully in their sleep. But that felt manageable, expected, part of the natural order, This is different. Death here is personal. It's violent. It's everywhere. It saturates the air like the smell of infection, hangs in the corners of every room, waits patiently in every shadow. I've watched boys younger than Thomas bleed out on stretchers, calling for mothers who were thousands of miles away. I've held hands that went from warm to cold in the space of minutes. I've closed eyes that were bright with life just hours before. You develop a relationship with death when you see it this often, an understanding, almost a respect. Some deaths are quick, a mercy really, a bullet in the right place, a catastrophic injury that shuts down the system before pain can fully register. Those boys are gone before they know they're dying. I pray for those deaths. I pray that if my time comes, it comes that way. But most deaths aren't like that. Most are slow, agonizing, drawn out over hours or days while the body fights and fails and fights again, while infection spreads, while organs shut down one by one, while consciousness flickers like a candle in the wind, present, then absent, then present again. Those are the deaths that haunt me. Because in those deaths, you see everything, the fear, the pain, the desperate bargaining, the anger at a life cut short, the grief for all the things they'll never do, never see, never become. And you can't look away. You can't close your eyes and pretend it's not happening. Because you're the nurse. You're the one who's supposed to help, supposed to comfort, supposed to somehow make the unbearable bearable. James's death was somewhere in between, not quick enough to be merciful, not slow enough to be torture, but long enough that he knew, long enough that we both had to face it together. Do you know what the worst part is, Mother? The worst part is the hope. Even when you know, when you absolutely know that someone is dying, there's this tiny voice in your head that whispers, maybe this time will be different. Maybe they'll rally, maybe some miracle will happen. I felt that with James. Even as I watched his breathing deteriorate, even as I saw the blood, even as every clinical sign told me he had minutes left, I still hoped. Stupid, isn't it? Hoping against all evidence, against all experience. But I think that's what makes us human. That refusal to fully accept the inevitable until it's staring us in the face. That stubborn insistence that maybe, just maybe, death will skip over this one. It never does. After James died, after I finally let go of his body and stood up on shaking legs, I went outside. I needed air, needed space, needed to remember that there was a world beyond that cellar, beyond death, beyond war. The monastery courtyard was quiet. Dawnlight was just starting to break through the winter clouds, pale and cold. My breath fogged in the air. I could hear distant artillery, but it sounded far away, like it was happening in another world. I sat on a broken stone wall and I cried. Not the quiet, controlled tears I'd allowed myself before. Not the professional grief I'd learned to ration out in small, manageable doses. I sobbed. Huge, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. Sobs I'd been holding back for months, for all the boys I'd lost, for all the hands I'd held, for all the promises I'd made to dying men that I couldn't keep. One of the other nurses, Margaret from Ohio, found me there. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside me and put her arm around my shoulders. We sat like that for maybe 10 minutes, neither of us speaking. Just two women holding each other up in a world that was trying very hard to break us both. Finally, Margaret spoke. "Which one?" she asked quietly. "James Mitchell," I said. 23. Married 16 months. Abdominal wounds. She nodded. "I had two this morning. Brothers. Got hit by the same shell. The younger one died first. The older one kept asking where his brother was. I didn't have the heart to tell him." "Did he make it?" "No." We sat in silence again. Then Margaret said something I'll never forget. "We can't save them all, Sarah. We can't even save most of them. But we can make sure they don't die alone. We can make sure their last moments have kindness in them. That's not nothing." She was right, of course. But Mother, it doesn't feel like enough. It never feels like enough. I've been thinking a lot about Ann Mitchell, who married a boy she barely knew because that's what you did in 1943. Ann Mitchell, who spent 3 weeks as a bride before becoming a woman waiting. Ann Mitchell, who worked in a factory making airplane parts and wrote letters to her husband promising to be there when he came home. Ann Mitchell, who will receive a telegram any day now informing her that her husband of 16 months died of wounds received in action. I keep imagining how it will happen. She'll be at work, maybe, or at home. The telegram boy will knock on the door. They always knock, never ring the bell, as if that somehow softens the blow. And she'll know. The moment she sees him standing there with that yellow envelope, she'll know. Her hands will shake as she opens it. Her eyes will scan the words, regret to inform you, I killed in action, deepest sympathies, and her world will end. Right there. In that moment, everything she'd been building her life around, every plan and dream and hope, will simply stop. She'll probably read it several times, as if reading it again might change the words, might make them say something different. Then she'll fold it carefully and put it somewhere safe. On the kitchen table maybe, or in the drawer where she keeps his letters, and she'll sit down. Just sit. Because standing suddenly requires more strength than she has. Maybe she'll cry, maybe she'll scream, maybe she'll just stare at nothing while her mind tries to process the unprocessable. Later, hours, days, who knows, people will come, her mother, friends, neighbors bringing casseroles and sympathy. They'll say all the things people say, he died a hero, he's in a better place. Time heals all wounds, and Anne will nod and thank them and accept their awkward embraces. But inside, she'll be screaming. Because platitudes don't bring back the dead. Because there is no better place than alive. Because time doesn't heal these wounds. It just teaches you to live with them. I wonder what she looks like. James described her. The freckles, the laugh, the determined way she moved through the world. But I can't quite form a complete picture. Is she tall or short? Does she wear her hair up or down? Does she have the kind of face that shows every emotion? Or does she hide her feelings behind a careful mask? I wonder if she's strong. I hope she is. She's going to need strength for what's coming. Because grief isn't a single blow. It's 1,000 small cuts spread out over days and months and years. It's waking up and forgetting, just for a second, that he's gone. Reaching for him in bed before remembering the bed is empty. It's seeing a man in uniform with the same walk, the same build, and feeling your heart leap before reality crashes back. It's throwing away his toothbrush and feeling like you've betrayed him. Keeping his clothes in the closet because giving them away feels like erasing him. Moving them to a box in the attic because seeing them every day is too painful. It's holidays, birthdays, the anniversary of their wedding, the anniversary of his death. All the markers of time that used to mean joy, now meaning pain. It's other people moving on, getting married, having babies, building lives, while yours is frozen in place, while you're stuck in a permanent state of before and after, and you live forever in the after. But here's what I hope for Anne. I hope she finds a way to keep living. Not just surviving, but truly living. I hope she doesn't let grief consume her entirely, that she finds moments of joy again, small ones at first, then bigger, that she laughs without feeling guilty about it, that she builds a life that honors James's memory without being trapped by it. I hope she knows that moving forward isn't betrayal, that loving someone else someday, if she chooses to, doesn't mean she loved James any less, that the heart has an infinite capacity for love and loss doesn't use it up. I hope she finds purpose. Maybe she'll keep working at that factory. Maybe she'll go back to teaching 3rd grade. Maybe she'll do something entirely new. But I hope she finds something that makes her feel alive, that gives her days meaning beyond just enduring them. I hope she's surrounded by people who know how to hold her grief without trying to fix it, who understand that some days she'll seem fine and other days she'll fall apart, and both are okay. Who will say James's name out loud because the worst thing for a widow isn't talking about her dead husband. It's everyone pretending he never existed. And I hope someday when she thinks about James, the first thing she feels is love. Not pain, not loss, just love. Pure and uncomplicated and warm. The love that existed before the war, before the telegram, before everything ended. That's what I hope for Ann Mitchell. I have the ring here in front of me as I write. It's sitting on this makeshift desk, just a piece of board laid across 2 ammunition crates, catching the candlelight, JM and AM, forever. I've been trying to figure out what to write to her. I've started and stopped a dozen times. Every version feels wrong, inadequate, insufficient. Dear Mrs. Mitchell, I held your husband as he died. Too blunt, too clinical. Dear Anne, your husband's last words were of you. True, but incomplete. Doesn't capture the fullness of those final hours. Dear stranger, I have your husband's wedding ring, and I don't know how to give it back. Honest, but hardly helpful. How do you tell a woman you've never met that her husband died well? That he was brave, but also scared, human, but also heroic, in love, but also ready to let go? How do you convey the terrible intimacy of those final hours? The way he cried for her, the way he held my hand like a lifeline, the way he asked if dying would hurt, and I lied and said no. How do you explain that you climbed onto a stretcher with a dying stranger and held him like a child because no one should die alone? But I'm going to try. I'm going to write to Ann Mitchell. I'm going to send her this ring, and I'm going to tell her everything, or at least a version of everything that she can bear to hear. I'll tell her about the moment James came in, about how I knew immediately that his wounds were fatal, but how I sat with him anyway, because what else is there to do? You don't abandon people just because you can't save them. I'll tell her about his eyes, those impossibly blue eyes that stayed clear and focused even as his body was failing. About how when he talked about her, those eyes lit up with something that transcended pain, about how love, real love, can exist even in the darkest moments. I'll tell her about the ring, about how he wore it over his heart like she asked, about how it did keep him safe, just not in the way she'd hoped. It kept his heart safe, his humanity, his capacity to love even at the very end. I'll tell her that James loved her fiercely, that her name was on his lips more than any other word, that even in unimaginable pain, thinking of her brought light to his face, that if love could be measured in the weight it carries, his love for her was the heaviest thing in that cellar. I'll tell her that he died bravely, that he faced the end with more courage than most men twice his age, that he didn't rage or curse or blame. He simply accepted what was coming with grace. But I'll also tell her the truth, that he was scared, that he cried, that he asked me if it would hurt and I lied because sometimes kindness requires dishonesty, that he was human in his dying, not heroic. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's beautiful in its own way. I'll tell her that I held him, that I comforted him as best I could, that his last moments weren't peaceful. War deaths rarely are, but they were witnessed, that someone who cared, someone who chose to see him as a person and not just another casualty, was there. And I'll tell her something else, something I'm only now beginning to understand myself. I'll tell her that her husband, in his final hours, gave me a gift. He reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. Not to fix things, though God knows I try. Not to save lives, though I celebrate every life I can save. But to bear witness, to hold space for suffering, to make sure that when the end comes, it comes with compassion. James didn't need me to save him. That was already impossible. What he needed was for someone to see him, to acknowledge his fear and his pain and his love, to tell him it was okay to let go, to hold his hand as he crossed from this world into whatever comes next. And in doing that for him, he did something for me. He cracked open the armor I'd built around my heart, the professional distance I'd maintained to protect myself from all this pain. He made me feel again, really feel, and feeling hurts, Mother. It hurts so much, but it's also what makes this bearable. Because if I can't feel the losses, if I can't let my heart break for these boys, then what am I doing here? I'm just going through motions, just counting bodies, just surviving. James made me remember that survival isn't enough, that we have to stay human even when humanity is the hardest thing to hold on to. I won't tell Anne all of this, of course. Some things are mine to carry, but I'll tell her enough. I'll tell her that her husband mattered, that his life, however brief, however violently ended, meant something, that he changed me, that because of him, I'll be a better nurse, a better person, more willing to break, more willing to love. I'll tell her that I'm sorry, so deeply, profoundly sorry. Sorry that she's receiving a ring instead of a husband. Sorry that forever turned out to be 16 months. Sorry that the world is cruel enough to give people just a taste of happiness before ripping it away. But I'll also tell her not to let his death define her entire life. That she's young, that she has decades ahead of her. That James would want her to keep living, keep loving, keep building the life they'd planned, even if she has to build it alone now. I don't know if she'll read it. I don't know if the letter will even reach her. Mail from war zones is unreliable at best, and sometimes letters arrive months late after the wound has scabbed over, and reading them rips everything open again. But I have to try, because James asked me to send the ring home, and I promised. And promises to the dying are sacred. They're the last thing we can give, the final comfort, the assurance that they'll be remembered, that their love will be delivered, that some part of them will make it home even if their body doesn't. I won't break that promise. Mother, I need to tell you something else. I've been doing this work for 18 months now. 18 months of blood and death and boys crying for home. 18 months of being strong, being professional, being the calm presence in the chaos. And I've been proud of it. Proud of my ability to function in impossible circumstances. Proud of my emotional control. Proud that I could look at the worst humanity has to offer and not break. But today, holding James, I realized something. That distance I was so proud of, that professional detachment, it wasn't strength, it was cowardice. It's easy to be unmoved by death when you don't let yourself see the people dying. When you reduce them to wounds that need treating, problems that need solving, cases that need managing. When you forget they have wives and mothers and dreams and futures they'll never get to live. When you make them objects instead of people. I did that. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I did. Not consciously, not cruelly, but out of self-preservation, because feeling every loss would destroy me, because there are too many losses to feel them all. So I built walls. Thick ones. I told myself it was professionalism, that good nurses maintain emotional boundaries, that caring too much would make me ineffective. And maybe that's true. Maybe you can't function in a place like this if you let yourself feel everything. But James didn't let me hide behind those walls. He reached for my hand and asked me to see him, to really see him. Not as soldier number 47 or abdominal wound or lost cause, but as James. Husband, dreamer, boy who wanted to build a house with a garden and have 3 kids and grow old with the woman he loved. And seeing him, truly seeing him, broke my heart. It shattered every defense I'd built, every carefully constructed barrier between myself and the pain. And for those hours we spent together, I was completely, terrifyingly vulnerable. Mother, I'm going to mail this letter tomorrow if I can find a way to get it out. But first, I'm going to sleep, if sleep will come. And then I'm going to write another letter to Anne Marie Mitchell in whatever town James called home. I'm going to tell her about her husband's last hours, about his courage, about how he spoke of her with such tenderness, about how his final thoughts were of the life they were going to build together. I'm going to tell her things that will break her heart, but I'm also going to tell her things that might, someday, bring her comfort. And I'm going to send her the ring. That small circle of gold that represents forever, even though forever turned out to be so heartbreakingly brief. I don't know what will happen to me after this war ends. I don't know if I'll ever be able to return to the girl I was before, the one who sang in church choirs and dreamed of ordinary happiness. But I know this. I'll carry James with me. His courage, his love for Anne, his humanity in the face of inhuman circumstances, and I'll carry all the others too, Cooper and Eddie and the boy who kept calling for his mama and all the countless names I don't even know. I'll carry them like stones in my pocket, heavy and uncomfortable and precious. Because that's what love is, isn't it, Mother? Carrying each other's weight, bearing witness to each other's pain, staying present even when it costs us everything. Today, I held a soldier's hand as he took his last breath, and tomorrow I'll get up and do it again. And the day after that, and the day after that, until this war ends, or I do. I love you, Mother. I'm sorry for who I've become, but I'm also not sorry, because who I've become is someone who knows how to stay, how to hold on, how to love in the darkest places. That has to count for something. Your daughter, Sarah.